Hey everyone, it's Raphael from XX Raphael Productions, and for today I'm going to be talking about The Flash Season 7, alright? So, before we begin this video, there are spoilers for the rest of Season 7 so far, so if you're not caught up to date with the latest episode, this is your warning to click out of the video before we continue. If you recall, I made a video a while back about how the Godspeed storyline could potentially save Season 7 because the last time I made it, we just concluded the Forces saga where we started from episode 1 where Barry regains his powers, then he uses the artificial speed force, and then he loses that speed again when he destroys it at the end of episode 2, and then they defeat the previous villain from the last season, and then we are into the Forces saga where it was pretty disappointing, alright? So that was the first half of Season 7. It lasted until episode 11, I believe. Yeah, it was episode 11, Family Matters Part 2. So, there was some good CGI here and there, but the plot and the acting and just the entire, the way the season progressed in general has been unsatisfying. It's been pretty bad, really. It's the only way I can say it. So, what I was trying to do was talk about the problems of the season, because so far, even with the Godspeed storyline being a little bit better, it's still not really what I would consider a quality Flash season, because, I don't really know what to expect, because I already knew that the Flash was going downhill, for a while now, but I had hoped that this would revive it, because Godspeed is a speedster villain, and the show, from what I remember, when I was first watching the show, the best villains were the speedster villains, like Reverse Flash, Zoom, Savitar, and all those kind of villains that have powers similar to Barry's so that it actually poses a credible threat. Well, unfortunately though, even with the return of Godspeed, because we were introduced with Godspeed in Season 5, but even with the return of him, it's not really enough to save the season, and I know that Season 7 has not yet been finished. We're only at episode 15 right now. No, episode 16, because we only have 2 episodes left. I believe Season 7 is concluding at episode 18. And I was hoping that it would get better for the second half, but now that we only have 2 episodes left, I can confidently say that this season has been a massive disappointment, alright? And there's a lot of things why. I can go on and on about this, but let's go ahead and first start with the main reason, and I think that it's because Barry is barely the Flash anymore in this season. Now, there are other seasons in the past where people were hating, let's say Season 5, where people didn't like the season, but I actually liked the season. I know Cicada was a pretty bad villain, but I think that it had enough rewatchability that made the season enjoyable. So we had the Flash Museum, we had the Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is being teased constantly throughout Season 5, we had Reverse Flash manipulating the events of Season 5 from 2049, and then we also had the storyline of Nora West Allen trying to get to know her father after he vanished in the Crisis of 2024. And then eventually all of that kind of made the season still worthwhile to watch, even if Cicada was the main villain and was also disappointing. But still, like I said before, there were times, even for a villain like Cicada, there were some points that I liked about him, so I never really got the hate for Season 5. I still enjoyed it. I can see the reasons why, but I never really considered Season 5 to be a bad season. But Season 7, oh my god, Season 7 has almost nothing redeemable about it, really. If you thought Season 5 was bad, well, you're gonna have a field day with this one, alright? So, Season 7, at least in the earlier seasons, Barry, at least, there were a lot of good fighting scenes to keep the episodes entertaining. Now, the writing may have suffered, but what kept the show afloat was the chemistry between the characters, the fighting scenes, the action, and just the overall progression. But Season 7 has pretty much, almost none of that now. The Godspeed storyline improved over the Forces one, but other than that, it's not really saying much, considering how bad the Forces saga was. It's not really an achievement to beat it with the Godspeed saga. I'm sure I can write a better storyline than that as well, but yeah. So, in the Forces saga, it's the CGI was questionable. Fuera's CGI when it was first introduced was absolutely horrendous, and then there were times that there were too much pep talks. I know like you've heard this a lot, but there were a lot of pep talks constantly, and this is not an Iris hate or anything like that, but like Barry and Iris's chemistry in this season has pretty much gotten worse. Like I mean like in the previous seasons at least you could see it. Season 5 had like Barry and Iris trying to learn how to deal with their daughter from the future. Season 4 had Barry and Iris working out like, you know, their couple issues in couple therapy and stuff. Iris actually being a team leader, so at least she was given a role at the time. And Season 3, the plot revolved around Iris dying in May 23rd, 2017, and the team had to stop that from happening, alright? So, in all of these, out of all 7 seasons right now, really, Season 7 has dealt with this in the worst way. Like, honestly, at this point, I feel like I can barely feel the chemistry anymore especially during the first half. Now, all of the stuff I'm trying to say here, this is especially true in the first half of the season. Like, at least the second half somewhat improved on this. At least, like, they're talking about their future kids now, and I can see the themes Eric Wallace is trying to convey for this, okay? So, I know that I can see the idea, like the Speed Force storyline, Speed Force going rogue, the Forces being their children. I found that part extremely awkward, but I can see the ideas they were trying to implement. So that is because they were trying to tease Barry and Iris's future family, so I can see the reason why they're referring to them as mom and dad and stuff, but I just think that the execution was horrendous. Every time they did that, I just kept saying, oh my god, like, I kept actually saying that out loud, and I have never done that, even during the low moments of the show, like the Saboteur storyline or the Cicada storyline. I've never actually outright facepalmed and wanted to quit the episode right there, as much as Season 7 has made me do, alright? So, yeah, and another thing that I think Season 7 is lacking, aside from that, is the action sequences, alright? So, a lot of times, like, the Flash gets knocked down, then the villain just goes away, and boom, that's it until the next scene again, where there's a bunch of melodrama and a whole bunch of filler until they finally talk down the villain, and then problem solved. Like, I mean, let's think before. The writing has never been the show's strong point. I think, like, the strongest writing has been in Season 1, where they clearly had the Reverse Flash saga planned from start to finish. It was, I wouldn't say flawless, it's not flawless, but that is still the strongest season when it comes to the plot. And what kept this show afloat, though, were the fighting sequences and the chemistry between our main cast, which made the episodes enjoyable to watch despite the plot suffering. It's been a problem for a while, even during the earlier seasons, really. But yeah, that goes on all-time low in Season 7, though. Like, the action is barely, like, I mean, like, let's see, we had, like, the last I know, like, this particular Force, the Psych storyline was okay, I guess. Like, I liked the way they shot the horror scenes, like the horror movie type of style. I liked that part, but other than that, it just feels like they could have done more with the Forces saga. They definitely wasted a lot of potential with this, because on paper, it sounds interesting. You rebirth the Speed Force in Episode 3, and then you're kind of, like, making the Speed Force go rogue because all these other forces are running amok. Like, that kind of storyline on paper has a lot of potential. It sounds interesting, but the way they did this, when they try to call Barry and Iris' mom and dad and stuff, I was just like, okay, what is happening? What's going on? Who thought that this is a good idea? But like I said before, I know that they're trying to connect this to the future family that Barry and Iris are trying to create, but still, it just didn't work, period. Alright, so now that we have concluded the Forces saga in Episode 11, so that's pretty much my problems with that. The barely any chemistry with the main characters, despite that being true in previous seasons. And let's go ahead and now talk about the Godspeed saga. So I know that this has not yet been finished, but let's go ahead and just talk about it now. I will release my Season 7 review on July, like late July, when the last episode has finally been released. But let's go ahead and first talk about what we've got so far from the Godspeed saga. So for the Godspeed storyline, well, starts from Episode 12. So we got Cisco's leaving. I actually did like this episode. I actually like this episode because the way they did with Cisco's character, like I know Cisco has been kind of going downhill in general ever since Season 3, when he found out Dante was supposed to be dead from when Barry created Flashpoint. Like, that moment was a turning point for Cisco's character, and while it is realistic, since Cisco has gone through a lot, but it just really made his character less enjoyable to watch, so I really felt like his character hit an all-time low in seasons 5, 6, and 7. I know season 5 he gave up his powers, and I really thought he was going to leave the show right there, but yeah, he stuck around until season 7, episode 12. It's called Goodbye Vibrations. Now, when I say I like the episode, it's like it was a good farewell letter to Cisco's character, and though the villain was Rainbow Raider Part 2, and she was so forgettable. I like the way they resolved this storyline was horrendous, but at least the Cisco stuff was able to keep this episode somewhat watchable, alright? So, the villain has absolutely the villain parts of this episode have absolutely no part into why I say this episode was decent. I just think that the way they said goodbye to Cisco was effective. I was like, oh yeah, I mean, this one of the OG, the original cast members, are finally leaving the show after 7 seasons. And the same thing with Tom Cavanagh, like he could return as Reverse Flash, but he did leave the show as well. Like, I mean, the 2 best actors leaving the show, oh my god, that would definitely take a hit to the show in the long run. But anyway, so since we're talking about Cisco, his farewell was effective. I actually was impressed with that one. They got me feeling that, but yeah, so that episode was decent, and the tone was really light. I mean, like, it's kind of like season 1 tone again, so that definitely contributed to that. Anyways, that was a good episode, and then, but I know that this entire section is a Godspeed saga, but they don't really show Godspeed until episode 15, but they do allude to him every now and then. We got some fillers for the Godspeed saga until episode 14, and then, now the thing with the Godspeed storyline though is that they have pretty much like, I know that it's not finished yet, so it's probably unfair to judge from now, but it's still lacking that particular feeling you get from season 1 and 2 when the speedsters are a credible threat. Like, okay, we got better fight scenes now, but like, it just feels like they've underused Godspeed in seasons 5 and 6, so they're trying to like make up for it in season 7. It's pretty obvious. You can tell as a viewer, you can tell that. And like, they got August Hart in the latest episode. Like, episode 16 was pretty eventful, actually, I would say, like, because of that. But still, it's still not really at the level of how the Flash could have been, like, in the earlier seasons. So, now the one thing that's really lacking though is that it's the lack of like a direction. Like, look at the first 5 seasons. Okay, so seasons 1 to 5 are clearly building up to the Crisis on Infinite Earths, where it has been teased since season 1, episode 1, when Harrison Wells, or aka the Reverse Flash, Eobard Thawne, has checked the future countless times to see if it remains intact. So, even when the plot suffered, we were still hyped up for the so-called endgame of DC, where it was all of these seasons were building up to Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now, obviously, I'll get into this video later on, like, why Crisis was a disappointment. I'll talk about that in a different video, because we're talking about Season 7 in particular. But, still, all these were building up, so it feels like ever since the second half of Season 6, like, we had the Mirrorverse storyline, which is disappointing. Just, in general, they had to extend that villain into Season 7's first 3 episodes. The Forces storyline was, again, executed poorly, and then the Godspeed storyline so far, I'm not enjoying the plot of the Godspeed saga, but I'm enjoying the action overall, so at least they've got that down. But it's still sad that Season 7 has been a disappointment. Like, I had hopes that it would get better because the show does best at a speedster villain, but even then, right now, it's still subpar at best. I am hoping Season 8 steps it up, but I don't know what to expect, really. I mean, I was also disappointed in Season 6, so I don't know why I was expecting Season 7 to be any better, but, I mean, I guess you learned the hard way. Well, yeah. So, I will release my full review on Season 7 around the end of July, when the last episode has finally been aired. Like, I'm watching this season not because I enjoy it, but it's because I've been a fan of this show since Season 1. I still love Season 1. That's what got me into this show in the first place. Now, even as a Flash fan, I can admit, those days are long gone, period. The days of Season 1 and 2, and to an extent, Season 3, they're long gone. I know, like, the show has its moments from time to time, but it never really recovered back to Season 1 levels of quality, period. So, I'll release my full review on Season 7 at the end of July, but this video is simply to talk about why Season 7 has so far been subpar, and also talking about the problems about it, alright? So, I'll see you guys in my next video. Raphael out.